New Zealand is often imagined as a remote green country at the edge of the map, but its isolation is exactly what makes it so distinctive. Located in the southwestern Pacific Ocean, it lies east of Australia across the Tasman Sea and south of New Caledonia, Fiji, and Tonga. The country is built around two main islands, the North Island, known in Māori as Te Aikamaui, and the South Island, Te Waipounamu. Around them are more than 700 smaller islands, ranging from inhabited communities to rugged protected landscapes. By area, New Zealand is the sixth largest island country in the world. Its remoteness shaped its ecosystems, its human history, its economy, and even its national identity. This is a country formed by distance, but never disconnected from the wider Pacific. The physical landscape of New Zealand is one of dramatic contrasts. Snow-covered peaks, deep fjords, rolling farmland, volcanic plateaus, beaches, forests, and geothermal fields can all be found within a relatively compact area. Much of this variety comes from the country's position on active tectonic boundaries. The Southern Alps, or Katiratirai o Te Moana, rise along the South Island as a result of powerful tectonic uplift. Volcanic activity has also left a major imprint, especially in the North Island, where volcanic cones, hot springs, and geothermal areas reveal the forces beneath the surface. New Zealand's land is not ancient and still, it is restless. Earthquakes, eruptions, and erosion continue to reshape the country, making geology a visible part of everyday life. New Zealand was the last large habitable landmass to be settled by humans, which makes its human story unusually recent in global terms. Polynesian navigators reached the islands between about 1280 and 1350, crossing vast stretches of ocean using deep knowledge of stars, winds, currents, birds, and wave patterns. Over generations, these settlers developed a distinctive Māori culture adapted to the colder climate and varied landscapes of Aotearoa, the Māori name widely used for New Zealand. Māori society formed around iwi, or tribes, and hapu, or subtribes, with rich traditions of genealogy, oral history, carving, performance, agriculture, and warfare. The relationship between people and land became central. Mountains, rivers, and coastlines were not just resources, they were ancestors, landmarks, and sources of identity. European contact began much later. In 1642, the Dutch explorer Abel Tasman became the first European known to sight and record New Zealand, though his encounter with Māori was brief and violent, and Europeans did not settle immediately. More than a century later, in 1769, Captain James Cook arrived. Cook became the first European to set foot on and extensively map New Zealand, producing charts that drew the islands into European imperial knowledge. After that, contact increased through sealers, whalers, missionaries, traders, and settlers. These encounters brought new technologies, crops, weapons, diseases, and religious ideas. They also brought growing pressure over land and authority. New Zealand was no longer isolated from global empires, and the balance of power began to shift. A turning point came in 1840 with the signing of the Treaty of Waitangi between representatives of the British Crown and many Māori chiefs. The treaty is often described as New Zealand's founding document, but its meaning has been deeply contested from the beginning. English and Māori versions differed in important ways, especially over sovereignty, governance, and the protection of Māori authority. For Britain, the treaty paved the way for declaring sovereignty and establishing the Crown Colony of New Zealand in 1841. For many Māori leaders, it was understood as an agreement to manage settlement while preserving chiefly authority and land rights. The gap between these interpretations became one of the central conflicts in New Zealand history, with consequences that continue to shape politics and society today. Colonization brought major upheaval. As British settlement expanded, disputes over land intensified. A series of conflicts, often called the New Zealand Wars, took place between colonial forces and various Māori groups during the 19th century. After these conflicts, large areas of Māori land were confiscated or alienated through legislation, purchase, and pressure. The loss of land affected economic independence, social structures, language use, and political power. While New Zealand later developed an international image as progressive and peaceful, this colonial history remains essential to understanding the country. Modern debates about treaty settlements, Maori rights, language revival, and inequality are not separate from history, they are attempts to address its lasting effects. The past is still present in land, law, and identity. New Zealand's political development followed a path from colony to self-governing state. It became a dominion in 1907, a status that reflected greater autonomy within the British Empire. Full statutory independence came in 1947, though the country retained the monarch as head of state. Today, New Zealand is a constitutional monarchy with a parliamentary system. Legislative authority sits in a single-chamber parliament, meaning there is no upper house. Executive power is exercised by the government led by the Prime Minister, currently Christopher Luxon. King Charles III is New Zealand's monarch and is represented domestically by the Governor-General, Cindy Kiro. In practice, political power comes from elected representatives, while the monarchy functions within constitutional limits. This structure blends British inheritance with New Zealand's own democratic evolution. The country's population today is around 5.3 million, with most people living in urban areas. Auckland is the largest and most populous city, a major economic and cultural hub with strong Pacific and Asian connections. Wellington, located at the southern end of the North Island, is the capital and the centre of national government. The majority of New Zealanders are of European descent, often referred to locally as Pakeha when contrasted with Maori identity. Maori are the largest minority, followed by Asian and Pacifica communities. Immigration has broadened New Zealand's cultural landscape, especially in recent decades. As a result, the country is not simply a British settler society or a Maori homeland, it is a Pacific nation shaped by many layers of movement, settlement, and belonging. Language reveals much about modern New Zealand. English is dominant in daily life, government, business, and media, and the local dialect has its own accent, expressions, and rhythms. But the country has three official languages: English, Maori, and New Zealand Sign Language. The recognition of Maori as an official language reflects decades of activism and cultural revival after long periods of decline caused by colonization and assimilation policies. Maori words are increasingly common in public life, from place names to greetings such as kia ora. New Zealand Sign Language's official status also points to a broader understanding of inclusion. Language policy in New Zealand is therefore not just about communication. It is about recognition, repair, and the idea that national identity can include more than one voice. New Zealand has long been associated with social reform. It was the first country in the world to give women the right to vote in national elections, achieving women's suffrage in 1893. It was also the first to introduce a minimum wage. These milestones helped build a reputation for progressive politics and social experimentation. Today, New Zealand ranks highly in many international measures of quality of life, human rights, public trust, and low perceived corruption. Yet this positive image has limits. The country still faces visible inequality, including structural disparities between Maori and European populations in areas such as health, wealth, education, and justice outcomes. New Zealand's story is therefore not only one of achievement. It is also one of unfinished promises and continuing efforts to make rights meaningful in practice. Economically, New Zealand has changed dramatically. For much of the 20th century, it maintained a more protectionist economy, with strong state involvement and close trading relationships, especially with Britain. In the 1980s, major reforms transformed it into a more liberalized free trade economy. Today, services dominate, including finance, education, healthcare, technology, and professional industries. The industrial sector remains important, while agriculture continues to be central to exports and national imagery. Dairy, meat, wool, fruit, and wine all play major roles. International tourism is also a significant source of revenue, driven by landscapes, adventure travel, Māori culture, and the country's global reputation. But dependence on trade and tourism also creates vulnerability, especially in a world affected by climate change, pandemics, and shifting global markets. New Zealand's place in the world is defined by both independence and connection. Its closest relationship is with Australia, across the Tasman Sea. The two countries share a strong trans-Tasman identity shaped by geography, migration, trade, sport, military history, and centuries of British colonization. But New Zealand is also deeply Pacific. The realm of New Zealand includes Tokelau as a dependent territory, the Cook Islands and Niue as self-governing states in free association, and the Ross Dependency, New Zealand's territorial claim in Antarctica. Internationally, the country is considered a middle power, active in organizations and forums where it often emphasizes diplomacy, trade, human rights, and regional cooperation. New Zealand may be geographically distant, but its history, politics, and identity connect it to the Pacific, the Commonwealth, Asia, Antarctica, and the wider world. If you found this helpful, please like this video and subscribe for more explainers.